Going hot.
Welcome back to the Going Hot podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Jared Shaw and welcome in the Terminalist, New York Times best-selling author, Jack Carr. Let's do it. All right, we are back with the Going Hot podcast. We are joined by Jack Carr. My friend, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know you've done some smaller shows like Joe Rogan and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you stepping up and coming onto our show here. It means a lot.
Oh man, those were all just in preparation for this. I was just getting myself ready, going on Rogan and Tucker, things like that. It was all in preparation for today. So thank you for having me.
Here, my brother. I hope you're ready, my friend. I hope you're ready. But no, yeah, all joking aside.
Who's that guy next to you?
Yeah, no, this guy right here, I figured you all might know each other here. And I was really excited to set this up for that very reason, because as a fan of the Terminalist and the series, you know, I've read the books. I'm excited for them. But what's really cool to me as the big brother is how it all came together. And I've got to hear you on Joe Rogan talk about it and some of the other places. But I got to hear it from Jared right here next to me. And so I wanted to put you guys on the same call and hear you all tell the story together about it, because the Terminalist has been years in the making, and you guys have had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get you to this point of this combined success that you all are enjoying right now. And so on that note, how did this come together? You know, how did you go from a team leader, platoon commander, to world-renowned author and about to have a prime series and that's just going to crush it?
Crazy. Well, I'll take it back a little farther. I'll take it back to just growing up and knowing those two things that I wanted to do, and knowing that I wanted to serve my country in uniform from my earliest days. And then a little bit later, but not much later, knowing that I wanted to write thrillers after that. And that's just, hey, growing up, I was, it was just innate. So I knew I was just driven to serve. But then I grew up with my grandfather's medals and his wings. He was a Corsair pilot in World War II. So that's the plane that had the gull wings that folded up like that. And he was killed off Okinawa in 1945. So I had pictures of him and his plane and his whole squadron and in the Pacific, and the silk maps that they used to give aviators back then, all his medals, all that stuff. So I had all that in like a box. And that's really the only connection that my dad had to his father, because they never met. And back then you couldn't just reach out and try to find people who were in your dad's squadron on the squadron Facebook page or anything like that. So there just wasn't a lot of connection for these kids that lost their fathers in World War II. But our connection to that generation and to his father and my grandfather was really through a show called The Black Sheep Squadron with Robert Conrad back in the day. And he was portraying Pappy Boynton, a Corsair pilot. And I think that's where my leadership style may have started to originate, because in that show, Pappy Boynton was a heavy drinker. He was a fighter, and he crushed. And his guys respected him, and he made good decisions. He was a warrior. And so I think that was kind of the bedrock. But he was also didn't have a lot of love for authority. I guess that might be a good way to put it. So I think that was from my earliest days, that kind of gave me a foundation. I really resonated with him as a character. And then I found out about what SEALs were when I was 7. So, right about that same time, we're watching that show. Of course, I'm naturally gravitating towards G.I. Joe stuff and just running around the woods and, all the stuff that kids do. But I found out what SEALs were, and I'm like, this is my path. And I just, for whatever reason, seeing those guys, and it was a movie, The Power of Popular Culture, seeing a black and white film called The Frogmen. And I saw that just in between football. My dad would watch football, and then I would get to go and turn that channel. The 2 minutes and 30 seconds or 2 minutes that we had for a commercial break, I would run up to the TV, switch it to the one outlier channel that we had, because it was ABC, CBS, NBC, and this outlier channel that always had a war movie playing on Sundays. So I didn't really care about football, but I cared about that war movie. And so I'd get to do that. My dad would just look at his watch and he'd be like, turn it back. And then I turn it back and like football, and I wait until the next commercial. But one of those shows was The Frogmen, and it showed these guys coming up on the beach and putting explosives on these obstacles. And just asked my dad who these guys were, and the name of the show was The Frogmen, so he said they're frogmen. And then my mom was a librarian, still is a librarian, and we went down to the local library, did some research, found out about UDT, Naval Combat Demolition Units, and Navy SEALs. And I was like, all right, these are my people. And just found out that from that research in the early 80s, when you could actually research everything written on SEALs, because there wasn't that much, you could read it all in about a half hour, an hour. And my takeaways were that, hey, these guys are some of the most elite special operators in the world, and the training is some of the toughest ever devised by a modern military. So I was on that path very early on. But then I started reading the books that my parents were reading at about age 10, for sure by age 11. So 5th grade, 6th grade, I started reading Hunt for Red October, and then the David Morrell books, Brotherhood of the Rose first. And then I found out that he also wrote First Blood, written in 1972, created the character Rambo. Nelson DeMille, AJ Quinnell, JC Pollock, Mark Olden, Stephen Hunter, all these guys who had protagonists with backgrounds in Vietnam, and typically in special operations, SEALs, Army Special Forces, Marine snipers, or CIA paramilitary guys. That was kind of the typical 80s, early 90s protagonist action hero guy. So I was reading these books as research, essentially. And then also realizing that, man, one day after I'm out of the military, I'm going to write thrillers just like this, because there's magic in these pages. And I just knew that was my calling, first to serve and then to write. So that was just my path. But as I was getting out, this is where Jared and I crossed paths. So in my head, I'm coming back from Iraq, and in my head, I know that, hey, my tactical leadership time is over. I'm not going to ever be able to lead guys tactically on the battlefield again. If I stay in, I'm going to go to a staff job, and then I'm going to come back maybe as a team commanding officer one day, which sounds impressive. But if you've been in the military for the last 20 years, you know that commanding officer stays back in a tactical operations center and allocates assets and isn't out there on the battlefield with the guys. So it was very clear to me that it was time to get out, and my family needed me as well. So both those things came to a head at the same time. Realizing I'd done what I came in to do, and now it was time to pursue this other passion of writing. But I still had a few more years left, so I went to BUDS. They put me at BUDS, and as the operations officer, which is like a COO at a corporation for anybody in the business world. And that's where I ran into Jared Shaw, who would change the course of my life. And so yeah, we crossed paths there in 2012, 13. I think that was the year overlap right there. And Jared had this incredible reputation as a SEAL, as a warrior. And so we connected off that, and then we went our separate ways. And I started writing this book, and I got it to Simon & Schuster, and they decided to publish it. And as it was coming out, I got reconnected with Jared through our friend David Bowles, and I talk about him in the new foreword to this, so we don't need to edit out his name or anything. And I'd met him when he was working as general counsel for an outdoor industry company, and we got to be good friends. And he was also good friends with Jared Shaw, and he knew I had a book coming out, and he knew that Jared knew Chris Pratt. And I don't know if David knew. I don't think he knew that I had envisioned Chris Pratt playing the role of my protagonist, of the main character, as I was writing. So as I'm still a SEAL in my little office off our bedroom in Coronado, California, off our rental place, as I'm sitting down to type, I don't think that David knew that I had Chris Pratt in mind. But then he reconnected me with Jared, and Jared said, man, I heard you have a book coming out. And I was like, yeah, man, I'd love to send you a galley copy. It's like an early copy, a rough draft. And he said, yeah, I'd like that, but I also like to give it to a friend of mine. And I said, no problem. Who's that? And he said, Chris Pratt. So yeah, which was very convenient, Jared, by the way. I really appreciate that, especially since I pictured no one else playing this role except Chris. And then the other crazy part of the story is that before I knew, I had no connections in Hollywood, no connections in New York publishing, but I picked my publisher. because I went to the back of books written by Brad Thor and Vince Flynn, and they thanked a lady named Emily Bessler. And I thought, oh, she will be my editor and my publisher. And as I'm typing away, as a child of the 80s, it just makes sense to figure out who's going to play your main character. And Chris had not done Guardians of the Galaxy, had not done Jurassic World, had not done Avengers, any of those things. He'd done Zero Dark 30 and Parks and Rec. So I saw that transformation from Parks and Rec to Zero Dark 30. And I'm like, this is the guy. This is the person to play James Reese. And then since I'd already picked my publisher and I'd already picked my actor, I figured I might as well pick the director. And Antoine Fuqua, he was the only person I ever thought of directing. And now all three of those things have come to pass. Thank you to Jared Shaw right there.
Well, that's very kind. And you know, whenever I hear that side of it, you know, there's always the other side, which is my side. And what happened with that, going back to that 2012, 2013 time frame, 2013 was when my enlistment was up, my time was up, you know, and little did anybody know I was doing acting classes and all that, like we talked about, and kept that all very quiet, you know, and I knew like, I'm getting out. I just screened positive for a green team, you know, so that was kind of keeping me back on there with the past that I had with all the trouble that I got into, lost rank twice, got kicked out of all sorts of stuff. I mean, I was a problem child, but I was able to screen positive, which was a huge deal. And I'm like, oh man, maybe, you know, back and forth. And finally just had a piece of like, no, you know what, it's time. It's time that I punch out. There's other things that I want to do. But I didn't really know. I knew the safe thing was like, you know what? I go back to Texas and I just teach self-defense, you know, shooting, moving, that whole thing, and getting a range. We've talked about that stuff before, you know, and so I'm like, that's what I'll do. Well, kind of floundering, trying to figure it out on my own. And I see Jack one day, and he's, you know, our paths had crossed, but he was way higher ranked than I was. We didn't work in the same space a lot of the time, and he just comes up out of nowhere, you know, walking one day, and he's like, "Hey, you're Jared Shaw?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "I hear you're getting out." "Yes, sir." "Well, what's your plans? What are you doing?" And I think I'm going to go back to Texas. I, you know, would like to do the gun range deal. And he's like, "Really? Come into my office." So he takes, you know, time out of his day when we didn't really know each other at all, and brings me in there, sits me down, connects me with people that he knows, you know, just totally goes out of his way, stays on top of it, you know, within that transition period, you know, checks in on me when he didn't have to, when he didn't know me from really the next guy. But that speaks volumes about his leadership and who he is as a man, you know, and that always stuck with me. But I didn't know how much until, like he was talking about years later, that David Bowles reaches out and says, "Hey, you remember this guy?" You know, I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, "Well, he wrote a book. You need to read it." And I said, "You know what, David? Like, I remember that dude taking care of me, you know, and looking out for me when he had no reason to, you know." And that's kind of my side of it on how it all came together. You know, was you as a man, Jack, and your leadership and how you are. I never got to be in combat with you, but I've heard of your leadership on that side of it as well, you know. And so it's a blessing, man, to be sitting right here right now. That all happened for a reason.
It's so crazy. I mean, there's you know, I was telling this story with Chris and Antoine as we're doing the press junket for the show, and you know, those guys can't believe it. You know, they're, especially Antoine. You know, he's sitting there just shaking his head like he's been in Hollywood a long time and he has been crushing it for a long time, and never once has he heard a story like this, you know, to have it be so personal and to have it actually, you know, come to fruition like this. He's just like, man. So we're sitting there doing those press things, and I'm like, it's your typical Hollywood story, you know, and talk about it. And that's, it's definitely not your typical Hollywood story, but it made it so powerful. And then to bring, you know, David, really lucky we get with him as the showrunner coming in and build this trust with all four of us as we started to build out this team, and then, you know, create this thing that people are going to see on screen. It's crazy. It's remarkable. You know, I didn't really think too much about it, because then you're not actually focusing your bandwidth on doing the job, writing the next book, working on the scripts, editing this, boom, 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 But after we saw the premiere, and then I came back home on that Friday, the day after the premiere, or 2 days after the premiere, and sat down for a sec, I was like, man, first breath in a decade plus. And I was like, man, that's crazy how all this came about. And David Bowles is the unsung hero, though. I talk about him in the new forward to this, to the hardcover edition of the Terminal List. But man, what if he hadn't connected us? What if he hadn't reconnected us?
Yeah. Well, David Bowles called me and asked me, he's like, hey, do you remember this fella? And yep, I remember him. He wrote a book. And even in that time of my life, working with Chris and all, there was stuff that would get thrown to me all the time. Hey, you need to read this. I'm like, when I found out it was from Jack, I'm like, absolutely. But I kind of, no disrespect, Jack, I kind of went into it of like, all right, another military guy doing something, like, all right. But like I said, with what Jack had done for me, like 100%, I'm going to read it. I read it. And I'm like, oh, okay, we got something different.
Yeah, you called me after you read it. You're like, hey man, I just read this book. I'm gonna get you a copy of it. And you did. And
right there it is. And that's what it was. And and so that's when I got a hold of Jack, and I'm like, hey buddy, and we had that kind of reunion over the phone of put the pieces together, and I was able to tell him, like, dude, thank you for what you did. Like, you did something for me when you didn't have to. Never forgot it. Read your book, love it. Do you mind if I give it to a buddy? And that's when I gave it to Chris. And Chris, you imagine I get thrown one or two things every couple months for people to read. It's daily for Chris. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nonstop. And for him to pick something up and read it all the way through, it's got to be good. And he did that. He read the entire thing. And I mean, he wanted it before he even finished reading it. And I have a picture of the moment he started reading the book.
How cool.
Yeah, we were on a plane flying somewhere, I don't remember, and remember giving it to him, and he started reading it then. I'm like, oh yeah, that's picture. We need to hold on to that one, and so read it, he loved it, and then that's when Antoine Fuqua had wanted it the same time those two talked, and man, here we are.
Yeah.
I have that picture. It's awesome. And then I have a picture of you reading it. I have a picture of you reading the script,
That's right.
So it's just awesome to see this all come together. It's insanity.
Yeah. There's a picture of Chris reading the book. And then there's that picture, Jack, that you're talking about where, years later I'm reading the script. And then there's another picture where I'm looking at the TV at my house doing watching one of the scenes, of the show. So you have those three moments in time. And then the last one I've been waiting for, the fourth one, was going to be a picture from the premiere. So now we got that. It'll complete it, all four of them, the whole process,
How,
cool.
Jack, how many times throughout this process did you ever have moments where you just step back and you're like, I can't believe this is happening, from my brain to the book, to writing it all on paper, to now seeing Chris Pratt and the rest of your buddies and crew and everybody out there putting your vision to work? Did you find yourself at moments where you're just like, is this real life?
Not really until just a couple days ago. So got home from the premiere we had the premiere on Wednesday. The whole people out there taking pictures and the whole party and the whole thing. So that was Wednesday. I came home Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday I went right back to work writing. But at the same time, I was like, I took that breath, and that's the first time. I mean, I took a breath. It was like 5 seconds, but because you can't let too much time pass. You got to get right back on it. There's so much to do. But I was like, wow, man, it's kind of like we did it, because anytime along this process, there's so many things that can derail I don't even want to talk about it yet because we have a couple days to go until it actually hits screens. But the closer you get, the harder it is to derail. But there are so many opportunities throughout the whole process for it to go sideways, but or not get made at all, or not finish. But I always thought, because I wanted to do this from such an early age, that was just the natural path. It was, okay, I'm going to join the military. I'm going to go to BUD/S. I'm going to serve my country. I'm going to go into combat. I'm going to be a leader. And then I'm going to write thrillers, and it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. And then it's going to get made into a movie by an A-list star and director. Like, those were just the things I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. And so I never really thought about, oh man, what are the odds of making it through BUD/S, or what are the odds of making it to the getting published at all, let alone by a big New York publishing house. Then, the odds of making the New York Times list, the odds of something get picked up, and then the odds of that even getting turned into a film or a series. And but I never wasted any time. Like, that was 20 seconds right there. But that was 20 seconds that I could have been wasting every day for all of my life. And that would have meant that I wouldn't have been doing pull-ups or sprinting hills or reading about warfare or terrorism, insurgencies or counterinsurgencies. And it's time that, as I moved on out of the teams, that I wouldn't have been in the pages of my book, writing, refining, editing, thinking about trying to make it better. Like that time adds up, and you're not getting it back. So I never really spent any time worried about it not happening. But then this last weekend, after the premiere and after we went through that whole week doing the press in LA and getting to hang out with Jared all week, and every single person that was involved in production, I get to hang out with them. Then it kind of sunk in. But still, you said I got to stay hungry, and we're already, right before this call, Jared and I are talking about, other projects and other things that we have going on and things we want to do, and season 2, and is it going to happen? I don't know. We're going to be prepared for it, and how do we best prepare ourselves for that, and guiding that, and again, making sure that it's going in the direction that stays true to what we just created with this first season and all that. So it never stops. Maybe for that 5 seconds, taking a breath, and then let's get back after it.
Well, I think that speaks to your character and your work ethic. That you've climbed some of the highest peaks out there: SEAL training, writing a book, best-selling author, soon to be top TV series. What would you say to somebody that a young person that's just about to leave for the military, or even somebody that's further along in life, but they're struggling and it's just not clicking, and you've had this mindset from when you were young to basically just attack and be relentless and just keep moving. What would you say to somebody that's just starting in life or having a hard time? How do they tap into that? How can, the mind can be our strongest muscle and also the weakest. How do you condition yourself to just keep moving forward and find victory in what you do instead of defeat?
Yeah, I think it's work. Because I can tell you for sure how staying on your path and whatever your dream is, I know how to tell you how it's not going to happen. And it's if you don't put in the work. It might not happen even if you do put in the work. Might not happen. But it for sure will not if you don't. So that's the given. You have to put in the work. You have to build that foundation, whether you're starting at age 5 or 10 or 20 or 40 or 50. You have to put in that work. You can't just worry about it not happening and not do the work, because then it's not happening for sure. You've already lost. And you haven't even done the work. You haven't even done the prerequisite, which is putting in that foundation, which for me was reading and studying about warfare, and then training my mind, body, spirit to be the best warrior I possibly could, the best leader I possibly could. Everything was focused on that. But if I hadn't done those things, if I hadn't prepared, if I was just like, man, SEAL training looks tough, that would be awesome, but I'm not that fast, or man, I'm not that strong, or well, once again, how many times did I just waste right there? I could have been doing that pull-up. I could have been sprinting. I could have been reading that book about SEALs in Vietnam or whatever, and making myself an asset and making myself a better citizen along the way. So it's really about doing the work. You're not getting away from that. You have to do that part. So I think that's it. Realizing that that's the given. It might not work out, but it for sure won't without putting in that work. And then, you get to decide also while you're doing that, how you're going to impact those around you as you're doing that work. So are you going to be miserable? Are you going to be negative? You get to choose how you're going to impact people around you, especially when you get hit or you get tripped, you fall down, you got to get back up. You can get back up whining and complaining and talking about how life isn't fair, or you can get up and inspire those around you because they can say, wow, look at that hit that guy took. And look how he got up and kept moving forward. That is friggin' amazing. Guess what? I can do that too. So I think that's important. You get to decide. That's up to each and every one of us. I try to tell the kids, I say, never miss an opportunity to make somebody's day. So I think that's kind of a good way to go through life. Yeah, why not?
We come from a community, Jack and myself, of, like we talked about before, like, you have to rise to the occasion just to keep up with these people, and Jack and I were never, like I said earlier, and we never served overseas together. We weren't in combat together, but I've seen him on the back end of it, and I've seen him during this whole process, and what he's talking about, that hard work and all that, that man truly lives it. Mm-hmm. We will, even, during the premiere process that whole week, we would finish and it would be late, and would be tired, wore out, and, talking about like, we're getting back to the hotel, we're going to crash. He's like, cool, awesome. He's like, I just got a couple hours of work I got to do on the podcast or answering, building out the next thing. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I work decently hard. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like I try to push myself. I'm like, I don't know that I can keep up with that dude. You know what I mean? It is always nonstop for him. Like, he truly epitomizes that, what he's saying. Like, he lives it, man. And it's inspiring to me to see that. Once again, it's that push of like, okay, like, I better step up my game. I have to try to keep up with it. He just wrote his 5th book.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is has it made it more special going through this, getting to be with your buddies on things? And that's one of the things that I've always liked about, I know you all have a tight community, and I've enjoyed, that's one of the things that I've enjoyed seeing with Jared after the SEALs, is to still get to be with the team guys, find ways to still sharpen iron with each other and to lift each other's up, and I'm so happy to see all of you guys finding success and not really being shot at, and I was telling him, for the 10 and a half years he was in the SEALs, as a family, we always held our breath when he deployed, and when his team or his buddies, or, we came to look at these guys like family too, because he would bring them home, and I'm so happy to see you all still continuing to have each other's sixes and take care of each other afterwards, and y'all's dedication and just faithfulness to each other. To me, it's like y'all are still taking care of the man on the left and the right of you, and none of this would happen had you not been the man you were in the beginning, when, like he said, you didn't have to be. You could have been the commander. You could have stopped at the minimum, but as we seem to find out about your character, you don't even know what the minimum means, because you blow right past that. But because of that, you touched another life that kept that ball rolling forward, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to do this with Jared, and then to have a reunion on set, that first episode where I just posted a picture on my Instagram today with Ryan Sangster and Kenny Sheard, and the 3 of us standing with Chris there on set in that first scene. I mean, to have like good guys that you knew from the teams now out and crushing it and helping each other in this next phase of life, in this next chapter of life. I mean, that was huge. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would have been like to do this and not have that group of friends, because we had these this trust from the very beginning. Jared and Chris, and then me, and then Antoine, and then the showrunner, and then we had this core group, and we kept going. We never lost sight of what was important for this show, like where it needed to stay grounded. And this is Hollywood, so staying grounded is more difficult than one would imagine. You really have to work at it, especially as more and more people up and down this new chain of command that you have start getting involved, because they're bringing a whole lifetime of experience that's quite different, and they're bringing that, and they're experts in their field. But when it comes to a different type of project, you really have to have this core group that's willing to stand up and fight and make sure that you stay true to whether it's that source material or it's what this foundation that you start to build upon, like we did for this, and add these elements of psychological thriller and conspiracy thriller to what was essentially a revenge thriller, and make it and build off build upon the foundation of the book and make something that is visually appealing, because you're now telling a story through a totally different medium. So a lot of trust involved, but it was so cool to have like a reunion on set in that first episode. And I think the COVID police were losing their mind because it's like height of COVID. And, I show up there on set and it's like, dude, everybody's hugging and back, it's like, it's awesome. It was like a SEAL reunion on set. I think they were like losing their minds a little bit, but it was awesome. And then we had SEALs in different, and not just SEALs, but we had Army Special Forces guys, we had Marine, we had a bunch of different guys in different aspects playing FBI agents, HRT agents, throughout the rest of the series. And then we had Max Adams right there with us, essentially from almost Max the beginning. He's in the writer's room, and he's a former Army Ranger, and he's bringing this wealth of experience on the writing side of the house, screenplays. This would be a totally different project without Jared there every day, Max Adams there every day, and Ray Mendoza there every day. So Ray Mendoza, War Office Productions, we're all in the SEAL teams together, and then Max coming from the Army side of the house and bringing this screenwriting background and having us all work so well together. And of course, I had to fly home and work on this next book and that sort of thing. But these guys were there every single day. And without those three guys on set every single day, I'm telling you what, this thing would have gone off the rails. It would be a completely different show today. So I'm forever indebted to those three guys in particular.
Well, appreciate the trust and you letting us go with it, and I echo you on that about Max Adams. He was the Army Ranger that Jack was talking about in the beginning, day one in the writer's room. And that guy will never know the battles that he fought to keep it as authentic as he could, And then, Ray Mendoza, Kat Samick. She fought. She went to the mat all the time. And then I've talked with you a little bit about it. Dave DiGilio. That guy. I will forever be loyal to that man. He put his money where his mouth was every single time. We always talk about Chris and Antoine, but Dave DiGilio, I couldn't respect that man more than I do. Like he showed up and he fought every single time. Just an amazing leader. He led the show. He was every day in the writer's room, executive producer, and then fought for that authenticity. It would be a different project without him as well.
Well, because I'm strictly guessing here, but I'm willing to bet that Hollywood may not fully understand the SEAL teams, and so that a lot of the, I don't know what they are, Hollywood executives and stuff, if they wouldn't necessarily get you all side or point of view on a lot of stuff. So I'm glad that you had strong advocates there that would go to war for you.
Oh yeah, it would. I can't imagine having a different showrunner on this project, because the showrunner, for those listening, it's like more like a director in a feature film that's kind of running things. But when you have multiple directors, you have multiple storylines with different writers writing each one in different episodes, and you have to kind of weave all this together. Like, you're the person that's the glue dealing with all of that. What a patient individual. Like, that always stands out to me as well. Like, holy background, so even keeled, and just like, I took lessons from him. Like, sometimes you get, something happens and you're like, you spin up, like, son of, but him, like, he'll like take it in, and, you see him process for a sec, and, and then like think through a response, and not in an awkward way at all, but in like this positive way where you're like, how I totally forgot what we were just talking about, because now I'm so interested in how you're maintaining this cool, calm, collected demeanor and like having fun with this. Like, he had fun, it seemed like, with everything that most people would identify as a problem. Just his outward demeanor and body language and tone made me step back multiple times and be like, I just totally forgot what we were upset about, because this kid's one cool cat, and he's got a lot. When you think about everything he's responsible for on those sets, like, That's a lot. That's a lot. So I took that lesson from him. Like, yeah, maybe I should just take a breath every now and again and realize, hey, we have some time. We get some time to work on this problem. Kind of like take a breath, look around, make a call. Well, we don't necessarily have to make that call right now because no one's shooting at us, no one's flanking us. They might be in some sort of a figurative sense, but you know what? We have some time. And so I took that from Dave, and what a great guy, what an incredible human being.
Absolutely.
I've been really excited to see the different doors and avenues that have opened up for you guys because of this. And I'll use, for example, I was watching UFC last weekend, and I noticed right there in the middle of the octagon, they had the terminal list on there. I'm a huge UFC fan, and I thought that was really neat. But then also, even prior to that, I'm also a big SIG fan, and I think you are too, but you got to go out on the SIG deal with Valentina. I butcher her name every time, and I would never do it to her face because she'd beat me down, but you got to go out and have her as a shooting partner, and as I was watching that, I was like, what just a cool turn of events in his life that he goes from living the SEAL team life to now he's out here to SIG sponsored deal with the UFC champion out there as a shooting partner, and I just thought it was really cool, and I'll be tuning into the upcoming UFC, and I'm excited to see. It's just so cool to me to see all the different worlds come together for people that I look up to and admire. I'm very happy for you.
Oh man, thank you so much. Yeah, and Jared was invited to that SEAL or that SIG Hunter games as well, and but he had to work. He had to be on set. So I got to go.
I'll give you my number in case you can't reach him. I don't shoot as good. I don't run as fast. I'm not as strong, but I'm a little taller than him. So
that helps.
Well, that's not saying too much. Let's.
Yeah, I know. If you need a taller person to fill in for him, call me. I'll handle it. But that's all I've got on him is I'm taller. Other than that, I've got nothing.
That, man. No way.
Royce Gracie was there too, and he went back this time, and I couldn't make it this time this year, but he won. His team won this time. Royce Gracie, who was such a good guy. Oh my gosh, what an incredible, just a kind human being. And then of course Bullet was there as my partner, and then we had Cowboy Cerrone was there as well, and we had a blast. So
who's in our show, by the way?
Yeah, is that secret? I don't know if that's secret yet or not.
This will come. When does this come out?
We'll now air it after July 1st. We will make sure this airs after July 1st.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. Dang it.
This will air July 1st.
2 minutes after midnight, this drops.
Yeah.
We will not blow the surprise. Yeah. I really want to. I will, with the scoop, Cowboy Cerrone. No, we will not. This will air after that. So, but I just want everybody to know I knew before. Yeah. So I was in the cool circle of knowing that Cowboy was in there, and but no, again, I think that's really neat that you get how cool, and because I watch a lot of your SIG stuff too, and I just it's really exciting to me that you guys are getting to live lives that I feel you've earned through signing that contract with the SEALs, and like I said, to see you getting to do all these things where you're not being shot at, and you're not just trying to save your lives and the lives of your men, I think it's well earned, and I'm grateful that you're getting to do it, and you've earned it.
Oh man, thank you. I mean, it's gosh, I feel so fortunate each and every day. And that like in buds or whatever else, I always think back to all those people and what they sacrificed so that we could do this. So I could be there following that dream on the sand in Coronado, California, doing push-ups and getting sand kicked in my face and told I was never going to make it. And, all the things they say to everybody. But I thought back to from the inception of this country up until today, all those people who sacrificed everything so I could be there. Particularly, I think back to World War II, probably because I was on a beach. So it made sense to think about those that are storming the beaches of Normandy or Iwo Jima and what they had to go through and, crossing that sand and facing.
I really think that was our greatest generation.
Yeah, I mean, geez, those guys stepping off the back of the landing craft into the surf and then, running across that beach, machine guns in elevated positions, no cover, concealment or anything. And I'd be like, well, guess what? I can do a few more push-ups. I can get yelled at a little more here. But in life in general, I think that's a good thing to think about because it puts things into perspective. And then also it makes you maybe want to put a little more thought into some of the issues of our day, the more contentious issues of the day, and really put some thought and some study into them before making a snap decision or retweeting something from somebody who also did not put in the requisite time, energy, and effort towards studying that issue. Because when we think about what was sacrificed for us, that's what we owe those people that didn't make it home, or the ones that came home that never walked again, or they were missing arms and legs, or dealing with the post-traumatic stress, or dealing with the traumatic brain injury. And that's what we also owe those future generations, we've been entrusted with those freedoms. And so I think about that every day as well. My responsibility as a citizen to make good decisions for the next generation, because it's not for us. The decisions we make in that voting booth, it's really not for us. It's really for the kids and grandchildren and the future of this country. So I do think about that a lot, as well as I'm writing or just going through life. So
well, that's one thing. I've watched several of your interviews and stuff like that, and outside of Terminal List, and that's one thing that I respect and appreciate about you, is because in our hands we have the power of knowledge in our hands right here on these phones, and yet so many people choose to be willfully ignorant and not seek out the truth on an answer, and not educate themselves, but to fire verbal vomit from the hip and be so passionate in their ignorance and so convinced that you're wrong. And one of the things I've appreciated about watching your interviews is you don't show up at the table and try to wing it on stuff. You know what you're talking about, and you've done the research, and you're speaking intelligently and informed. And to me, it's such a lesson, because everybody shoots back with an emotional response now, or they're it's not truth that they seek, it's emotion or being affirmation, but when I listen to you speak, it's based on knowledge, it's based on history, it's based on research, it's you know what you're talking about. And I wanted to commend you on that. If nobody said anything, it's one of my favorite things about is the fact that you walk the walk and you don't just talk the talk. And I'm grateful, because I wish more people would actually not listen to the 10-second media clips on things, or be informed that way, or get their news off of a meme, which seems to be where we're at. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about watching you do things, is how much knowledge you bring to the table. And I appreciate that.
Man, well, thank you. And sometimes on some of those shows, it's tough because you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, maybe tops. And maybe there's another guest in there. And sometimes you're staring into a black screen. I don't know why that's the case in 2022, but you're staring into a black screen where you can just hear the host in your ear. So there's no body language, there's no verbal cues about if you should stop talking, if you should continue. Are they nodding? Are they shaking their head? Are they giving you a little okay, let's wrap this up? None of that. So you're just staring into this black box, and it's bizarre. But you can't go back. So there's the added stress of because on this I can go and say, oh, you know what? When we were talking earlier about X, Y, or Z, I think what I meant to say was this. I'm not sure if it came off that way, but this is really what I meant. Does that make sense? You do not have that on Tucker Carlson with 6 million people watching in your minute and 30 seconds that you have. What you say is going to be out there. So there's that added stress of that. So when I see people sometimes on there and they're saying things, I try to remember what it's like to be in that seat and staring into that black box, and you're hearing the host, and you have a minute and 30 seconds, and the added stress of that. So it's maybe not the best way to go about discussing some of these issues, but it's a way, and it's a way that comes into our homes primarily through television still, but it's a little bit uncomfortable. I much prefer something like this where we can go back and kind of discuss things like humans, rather than okay, boom, I'm going to ask a question that's designed to keep people focused right here. And then you have your 1 minute, and I might interrupt you a couple times during that. And it might not be a question that you think you were going to be asked, because the previous guest just answered that. And so now you get this curveball, and you're in the hot seat, and it's live. So it's it's a very interesting position to be in.
But again, you set yourself up to win there, which I think is, by doing we were talking off air earlier, and you were talking about how many you got to read these books and kind of how you do your show prep and stuff. And it's everybody thinks they can just go out and do a podcast or a video or this or that until you turn on the microphones and the cameras and you have to go, and it's go time, and that's where the rubber hits the road to me. And it's the guys that are prepared, that have done the work. I mean, you might stumble out the gate, you might do this, but you can fall back on your preparation. Whereas if you're trying to shoot it from the hip, you're going to get in trouble real quick in this industry or podcast or whatever, life.
Yeah. No, I mean, like Jared, I mean, people think it's easy, I could do that. All you do is go up there and say your lines, it's interesting to see it and see how much preparation goes into this, and to see Jared doing those classes to prepare for any role, and then zeroing in on Boozer's role, and then what he brought to that role. It's just not a SEAL playing a SEAL. I think that's like the misconception that a lot of people could have. You're playing a character and absolutely crushed. I cannot wait. One of those things I'm most excited about is for people to see you play Boozer and to see you and Chris at that bar. And what they won't know is how much more of that scene there is, and how awesome. Gosh, there was so much more in that scene and some other ones as well. But there's so much great stuff that got left on the cutting room floor, just by way of moving the story along, and it's, but so much of that is so great. But back to what it takes to do the job. You can't really, talk about it. Like, I can talk about it because I'm not an actor in front of the camera, but if an actor talks about how hard it is, like, people like immediately, oh, Hollywood, easy. People are bringing you your food, you're getting your makeup done and, all that sort of thing. Like, you can't talk about how long the days are. You can't talk about how much effort goes in. You can't talk about how much you take a script and you're out there and you're reading it, and the day of, it's not like you imagined it was going to be, or the terrain is different, or the weather is different, or something that another character or another actor brought to their character has changed something for you now in this next episode or scene. And all that stuff goes into it. You can't talk about how hard that is because people, dismiss it as Hollywood and you're complaining, but it is a lot of work. I mean, I just stood there as an observer and I got to see how much work went into that, and how much work goes in, how the makeup people put all that work in, and how the key grips put that work in, and how the mobility people put that work in, and how everyone is working so hard and they're at the top of their game, to include all the actors. And man, Jared, you just crush it in this. I cannot wait for people to see this portrayal because I know how much work went into it, and it comes across on the screen. It's just awesome.
Well, thank you. That means a lot, man. Being able to bring Boozer to life, a character that you wrote is, I mean, how cool is that? You know what I mean? To actually do it and then have the man that wrote it saying that, like, thank you. That's not lost on me, and man, I am proud and humbled and honored to do it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor. And what it's also cool is that you got to be there as a producer, as a technical advisor, and no one will know. Like, even I don't think Chris even knows like how much work you put in that was well above and beyond anything that you were specifically supposed to be there doing. Max and Ray, same thing, but you in particular, like, yeah, like I wish everybody could see how much, like, David knows, how much, Antoine, he wasn't there for, the scenes, the series or the episodes that he wasn't directing, but he knows, he's heard from Kat and from me and from other people, but David was there. And so he saw, and I just wish everybody could have seen how much of yourself you put into this, not in front of the camera, but behind the camera. And man, yeah. Thank you for saving this thing. Thank you for making this what it is today.
I appreciate that, man. It was a blessing, like what an opportunity, so I accept those words. I appreciate them, and I'm thankful to have been able to do it.
Man, and you know what else? They got left on the cutting room floor. There's a few things, but the two that stand out to me the most, well, the three are the ones we already talked about. With you in the bar with Chris, and then Chris driving the Land Cruiser and looking for the right kind of vehicle to steal. Because oftentimes in Hollywood, we just see somebody and they break a window of a car, they open the door, it happens to be open, and then they lean under that dash and they do something, and then the car starts.
Those two lucky wires, those two wires that you touch together every time that are just right there that'll start any vehicle.
Yeah, and I remember reading that scene the first time, and I was like talking to David DiGilio, the showrunner, about it. And I'd been to a car stealing school. Gosh, now it's been a long time. I won't even say what year it was, pre-September 11th though. And how they talked about the different types of vehicles and which one to look for, which ones were easier to steal, and what you would need to do that. And they're all a little bit different based on obviously model, make, and year. But for him to drive around, obviously looking, and have Katie's character there, kind of not really knowing what he's looking for. And then he sees that one, boom, backs it up, gets in there, makes sure that he, has the stuff he needs to, and then hot wires it the right way for that particular vehicle. You don't really see that too often in Hollywood. So, that didn't make it because, you're under time constraints.
That was all your notes, right? That was all your writing on that of writing that in and doing it the right way. Because I know I didn't know that one, so wasn't me.
No, I wanted to put that in there, but then Ray, when they found the actual car, then he went and figured out how to actually steal that particular one.
Nice.
And then the other one is, man, when the music's going and Chris is going back to into the team room, into the cages, and all that sort of a thing, and the music's going boom, 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 and then he opens the door and it shuts, and it's all the cages of the guys that didn't make it, and it's just silence. And it's like, man, that was powerful.
Right.
It didn't make it because it was like a break, or it was like anyway, it didn't make it either. But those are cool scenes. So there's almost like a whole nother 16-hour show that is a director's cut, of all those things. But I see why. Like, I learned so much during this process, and see how, working with people who are really at the top of their game as far as this stuff goes, I understand why. It's just unfortunate. And Stephen King calls it killing your babies. It's like you write something and you love it and it's awesome, but it's not working, and you've spent days, weeks on it, and you've got to edit it. You've got to Control Alt Delete that paragraph, that chapter, maybe a character even. But so I see why, but it's at the same time, it's like killing your babies, because those scenes were so good, and they exist out there somewhere. But just like with a novel, you need to edit it down to get it to the place where it's the best product that it can possibly be for someone to pick up and then digest and go on that journey. And same thing, but it's visual here, but the editing still remains the same in that some of them are painful to take out, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you.
Where do you go from here? What's next? Do we get a season 2? What are we heading towards?
We shall see. I think a lot of that's going to depend on how this season does, and I'm sure in the way that we consume things now, there's a lot of data out there for Amazon to look at and weigh, because they can tell exactly when we're turning things on and when we're turning things off and when we're switching. And, that data exists out there, just like it does on all the social media platforms and websites and everything else. But, I would hope that if it does well, and if Chris wants to do it, and if his schedule allows, that they can work that out, and we'll get the band back together and start moving forward on that. But right now we have a foundation, so we have a little foundation, a little outline that I put together and sent to the showrunner, just so we can start thinking about it, so we're prepared if they're like, hey, season 2. We're like, okay, not scrambling, but we have something that we can change and morph and edit and build upon. So we'll see. I'm hopeful.
And all of Jack's spare time, he's already written out.
Yeah, I know. He's probably on season 4 already.
Yeah, exactly. How he wants to do it. That told you the man doesn't sleep.
Well, I'll tell you from here, you guys will have entire communities supporting you. I can tell you that Jared has a whole entire hometown behind him. And by extension,
you do too.
We're just so wildly supportive of you all, and again, we're very grateful. I know how busy you are, especially now hearing it directly from you. So thank you for finding the time in your schedule to do this. Thank you for being a good friend of my brother. I'm very grateful for that because he's so special to me, and he's somebody that I look up to and I admire. And so to see him surrounded by good men, it does well for my soul. And so thank you for that. And you know, it's not lost on me that you're doing an interview with me because of my brother, and I'm grateful and I'm thankful, and I wish you guys the absolute success because I know you're going to crush it. And I'm calling it right now. You guys have a hit on your hands, and I'm happy for you. And this thing's going to go big. And so well done, my friend, and thank you. And Jared, thank you.
Yeah,
it's been a real honor to get to be your big brother through this process and get to see how all of this unfolded, get to see you with your friends and your mentors and people you look up to. It's inspiring. And so I thank you both, and it means a ton. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the support.
And Jack, again, thank you, my friend. Is there anything I forgot, anything we need to plug, get out, let them know about?
Oh man, no, I mean, I look up and admire Jared as well. And it's certainly not lost on me that I wouldn't be here talking to you about this 8-part series dropping on Prime Video with the exact person I wanted to star and the exact person I wanted to direct without the man sitting next to you right there. So that'll never be lost on me. So man, thank you both so much for everything. And Jared, looking forward to seeing you in a few days. And then getting back together and working on some more scripts and moving forward.
We need to meet out there at the SIG Ranch one of these days and go do some shooting out there. I could probably teach you guys a thing or two. I was Air Force, so I can certainly show you guys how to shoot and all that kind of stuff if you need it, you know. So
please,
you all just let me know.
I probably need it, honestly.
So
it's been a bit.
But no, again,
we need golf
thank you
lessons.
both.
We need golf lessons. We know who to call. I know how the Air Force is with the golf courses first.
We got you. Our greens are spectacular, you know. And so, but no, thank you for coming on the Going Hot podcast. Certainly appreciate it. Jared, thank you so much. We are pulling for you all, and you guys are going to crush it. And thank you so much.
Thank you, big brother.
Yep.
You guys take care.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it, man.
My friend.
Thank you.
All right. So before I let you out of here, what all have you actually done in regarding like Hollywood stuff, movies, whatever? Because Jurassic World, was that the first one?
Yeah, 2014, right when I got out of the military.
Right, because that was one of my, whenever I'd go speak at schools or whatever, I'd say, I especially the young, whose brother has been eaten by a dinosaur in here? You know what's even worse is how many of them raise their hands and said mine. You know, like
you're like, come on.
And I'm like, so your brother's been eaten by a dinosaur? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, well, never mind. You just stole my whole punchline, but no, that's. Nobody, it's funny because I'll go speak to classes and I'm like, hey, so we can talk about my real estate company if you want to, or my brother got eaten by a dinosaur. What do you guys want to talk about? And surprise, surprise, they all want to talk about you getting eaten by a dinosaur. And
awesome.
But that was pretty cool. We got to go out to Hawaii out there and see you guys work and all that. And man, we went to Hawaii. That's hard to beat. But it was that, Jurassic World, then Transformers?
Transformers last night or Black Night or
it was like part 27 or something. I forget which one.
Never actually saw it.
I saw the scene with you in it. You look cool.
Thank you. Was it?
No, I fast forwarded to that part because I'm just looking for you. I'm whatever. But
appreciate
it was. You look like a stud. You look cool. And so you went from there. Then you did some stunt work on Guardians. Yep.
And then I had a break in between there where, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but where I basically got afraid of my reputation and coming from the SEAL teams, and I saw doors kind of starting to open a little bit, and essentially it scared me. It scared me with my reputation coming from the SEAL teams of being judged by other SEALs. Of like, oh, he's Hollywood, this and that, and like we hit on a little bit earlier, we both loved acting growing up. It's something we did in school, something we did in church plays, all that. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't, hey, I just happened to fall into this. It's something that I loved to do, something I wanted to pursue. And then ultimately I just got scared. I got scared and I went with the route I knew, which was carrying a gun. I did personal security. I went back to the world that I knew that was safe as far as
Isn't that funny? I went back to carrying a gun and security because that was safe.
Yeah, exactly. But safe from the condemnation and ridicule from other team guys, you know. And I remember you told me one time, man, we were talking about, I think, the American Sniper movie, and I was gonna possibly like audition for it or something, and then I backed out. I'm like, that's out of fear of what would be spoken about me. And you were like, man, these guys may talk smack, these guys may run your name down, whatever, but if given the opportunity, every single one of them would take it. Every single one of them would do it. And that always stuck with me. And it took years for it to really like hit home for me to be like, no, okay, this is what I want to do. This, I'm doing it. I can't let a job that I used to do keep me from a job that I'm supposed to do, And so, yeah, it took a while, but I always remembered those words, man. And so
those guys don't pay your bills either.
You're exactly, yeah, you're exactly right, man. And so it, like I said, I had about a 3-year break of, I ran from it, and, went and worked with Chris just as a trainer. I didn't do anything on the second Jurassic. We were working together. He had some personal life issues. He ended up living on his own. But at that point, it wasn't happening. When he came back, we were still working on Jurassic, and he said, hey, man, why don't you move out to LA? Like, come, we'll train together, work together. It'll be awesome. I'm like, buddy, LA just not for me. It's not my thing. We go back. He goes back to LA. I go back to Texas. Hurricane Harvey hits and wipes out my my condo.
Your house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, so I call him up and I'm like, hey, buddy, like, is that
room still available?
Yeah, so
I don't have a house anymore.
Yeah, and he just happened to, like I said, have those personal issues going on where he became a bachelor, and he's like, come on out, man. So we, for a year and a half, 2 years, we lived together, and that's when, right around that time was when the book came. It's just, looking back, there's no mistake how it all happened, but really long answer. I apologize. Had that gap in between there, came back, worked on a SEAL team, that show on CBS.
Oh yeah, I forgot about SEAL team. Yeah. Actually, what was your character's name on
Benzo.
There? Benzo, yeah. It's Benzo and Boozer. Yeah, have been your two characters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I did a couple little small parts on there, and then I think it was Tomorrow War after that one. Yeah. Went out there just to train with Chris on Tomorrow War, and I had an audition for a role. Chris told me, he's like, audition for it. I'm telling you, you're not going to get it. Like, it's pretty much already cast. Just let them see you. Audition for it. So the dude's never been wrong, Went and auditioned for it. No joy, went out, didn't even think twice about it. Went out with Chris as his trainer, just as we would always do. And one of the main characters wasn't able to do it, that role. He was there, then had to leave. So they bumped up another guy to his role, and then there was an open role. And it ended up, it was supposed to be like a funny type of role, and they decided to go a more tactical route with it. And Chris was like, I got the guy. Like, and you've already seen him audition, actually. Like, so I didn't have to read for it, nothing. Boom, threw me in there. So I went in there just to, simply be a trainer. And
I want to say that I also called that one, I believe, because
I think you're right.
You did. I did, because you told me, hey, I'm going to audition for this, but I'm not going to get it. I said, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, he already told me it's cat, all this stuff. And I was like, you're going to get something.
Yeah.
Right? It's coming. Like, I just felt it. And then you called and, hey, so I was like, I told you. And what was cool is I got to go out on set of Tomorrow War and go out there and part of the team, Chris and those guys were all off in like Antarctica or something, Iceland or something crazy.
Really cold.
Yeah, somewhere, and we were in hot Atlanta, but from a big brother perspective, that trip could not have gone any better because I happened to get there on your film days where it was you, man, and I got to stand up. Well, first off, sad to say, I walked up to your stunt man, and I was like, hey, no, that's my brother right there. And I walked up, I was like, man, that's not my brother, but god dang it, looks just like him. That. Yeah, I mean, it was really kind of creepy how much you all looked alike. Once I got up close, but from 20 feet away, trying to look across the line, I was like, that's my brother, and I walk up, and it was not you. But that was such a cool day for me because I got to just... I think you rappelled out of a parking garage that day, and then you had to run under these big bridges where they were popping smoke everywhere and all that stuff. And
that was a cool one.
But, it was cool to me because, like you said, I got to see you It reminds me of that Luke Combs song, like that Doing It song, where they talk about, if you weren't doing this, if you weren't some big, huge singer, what would you be doing?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'd be doing this.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so special, because it doesn't matter if it's terminal list or if it's a community play or if it's you're doing what you're passionate about, what you've always enjoyed doing, what you're happy about, and it's outstanding that we're freaking about to launch, or we it's a joint thing, but but the terminal list is about to come out, and you're doing it, and it doesn't matter what level, because this is a passion. This isn't chasing Hollywood or chasing fame, any of those things, because I've seen you turn down opportunities and walk away from those things, but you're acting, and it's nobody will know the hours and hours and hours and hours spent where, you and I going back and forth on phone calls where you've read a script and we're trying to get this script right. And we just, what about this take? What about,
right.
Nobody knows that. It's like Jack said, everybody thinks it's, you show up, somebody puts on makeup, it's party and fun and games. And so, all of this is stuff you've earned, and I'm very proud of you. And where do you go from here? Like, I know you've got about 500 different things in the fire, because I try to like rope you in on stuff, and it's like herding cats, man. You're so busy, and which is good, but
thank you.
What next?
Man, that's the $1 million question. It's definitely focused on a second season for this. I believe, without the show having dropped yet, I believe the possibility is there. I do. I believe this is going to be something a little bit different than people have seen. And they may not love it, but I feel they're going to want to see more of it just to make sure they don't love it. You know what I mean? Like, or they're going to love it and they want to make sure they love it. Whatever it is, I think it's going to be enough to pique people's interest and be like, yeah, we want a second season. So there's been a big focus on that with Jack Carr, with Dave DiGilio, with Max Adams, Ray Mendoza, Chris, of already talking about that and trying to lay that foundation, but, those decisions are obviously made at a level way higher than mine, but we'll front load it. We'll put the preparation and time in for when they say, hey, we want a second season, like, sweet, here you go. Yeah, to where the thinking's taking care of the work. The heavy lifting, a lot of it is done. It's almost like calling the bluff. Like, oh, do you? Okay, here you go. Let's go. So that's a big one. But then it's, in this industry, it's kind of like fishing with a lure, man. You're casting. You're always casting. You ain't catching if you're not casting. And so if you're these other projects that that I want to work with Max Adams and Jack Carr, and Ray Mendoza and other people. It's just putting these things together, and you just one of them's going to hit. Terminal List was one of those things that it just, for how smooth it went, how quick it went, even though it was 3.5, 4 years, that's still in this world very quick, at least from what I've experienced, So it's just having these projects packaged, which is, a script, a breakdown, a pitch, and putting them in front of people. Things that I look at, that I read, I'm like, oh, that's cool, and then I get with people that are way better at this stuff than I am. Really, it's essentially just kind of team building. I'm not the smartest guy in any part of the process, but I'm blessed enough to work with the people that are, and then we try to package it and we try to do it again. Almost becomes cookie cutter in a way, but it's original to each project, and you put that love and time into each one, and you see if it responds to other people the way it did with myself or whoever we are working with on it, So once again, a long answer of, just continuing to grind and learning the writing process. That's been a big one, wanting to learn how to write, because once again, that's the foundation of everything, man, and then continuing with the acting, staying in acting classes, have to, stay on top of it. And the producing side, and building those projects and throwing them in there. And, so hopefully it's a season 2 right out of the gates. Hopefully, best case scenario, we are filming a season 2 almost done by this time next year.
Right.
That's the goal, but who knows, but other than that, auditioning, staying with it, just staying hungry, man, staying grinding, how we do.
Well, you grind and you're doing great, and I appreciate it. Thank you for my first podcast. Thanks for being you, and thanks for helping bring in Jack and all that we've done. This means more than you know. And like I said, nobody's going to be a bigger fan than me. Maybe your mom. Your mom's a pretty big fan, but iron sharpens iron, and I'm in your corner. And thank you for all the years of making me better and holding me accountable and being a good little brother. And so anything I'm forgetting, anything we need to hit?
No, man, I think we got it all, but just know, likewise, thank you for my first podcast, and thank you for starting back 15, 20 years ago, man, from, every bit of it up until this point, the rough times, the turn into the support, and the aggressive, vicious support, you know what I mean? Like, thank you.
I am pretty relentless. Huh?
Yeah, 100%. And you sharpen me the same way, and you keep me accountable. I'll never forget the rough times in my life when you were like, "Hey, I understand. You've been through some stuff. You've done this, but I expect more out of you. Mm-hmm. I expect more. That's not. No, we're not going to do that." Mm-hmm. And you held me accountable, and I don't live in that world anymore. Thankfully, that's not lost on me, and the continued support all the way up, sniper school, all that stuff, all the way up until this point, to be able to talk about this stuff, to be able to sit here and do that in this studio, that y'all have built together and done all this, and not lost on me. So thank you for taking the time and having me on as your first person on in a podcast. Like, what an honor, what a blessing, man. So, thank you.
You're welcome, and it is the first, and I really believe in my heart of hearts you're just getting started. And so let's have you have a few more cool adventures, and then we'll loop back around and we'll do this again. And
I'd love that.
You need to find room for me to go to these UFC things. Like, I tried to call Dana, he didn't take my call.
Weird.
I know, I'm working on that. I don't know if that number is right. It's just not going through.
It's got to be right. It's him. It's not you.
Like, he's going to call me back at some point. But until then,
he probably did.
I had my phone on silent. But no. Thanks, man. And again, crush it.
Yes, sir.
Crush it. Don't just win. Dominate.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you at the next one, man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Going hot.